Welcome back to episode 2 of Ink and Thread podcast with your hosts Jeremy Picker and
Angelo Montiel. How's it going, guys?
Getting ready for the holidays, wrapping up some rush orders, and now we get to focus on bringing value to our friends and colleagues and fans. To follow up on our first episode, Angelo was the guest, and we talked about his upbringing, his journey in the apparel world, his conversion over to the Amber way, and then just how he, as a designer, utilizes software and the trends into his design aesthetic.
It's a process. It's a learning process, and we're getting better. So
yeah, starting is the first step, and now we just have to refine. But to go into today's topic, and it is a trending topic in the fashion culture, in casual wear, and there's opinions on both sides of the fence, but Virgil Abloh, who is a creative director for Off-White, used to be the creative director of Kanye West, is the creative director now for Louis Vuitton, Louis Vuitton.
Close enough.
Yeah, that's close enough. And he was recently interviewed by Days Magazine, and he talks about how, or they asked, what does he see coming up in the next decade in 2020, and he talks about how he sees that streetwear is going to die, and he thinks that it's had its run and it's time to move on, which is causing a lot of controversy. But I think it will die in some aspect, but it will resurrect in another aspect. What are your thoughts on what he said? And you as a fan of street and pop culture, how do you take this whole article that he talked about?
Yeah, let's not forget he took a break from creation. He's been off the grid, or kind of taking a break from his creative process, which I totally understand. As a creator, you need space and time to think of your next move. So that was something cool for me to see, that even the big creators out there take their time to come up with the next move. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, he's definitely the top of the food chain for the last few years.
For sure.
With all of his collaborations and his taking those normal t-shirt price points up about 10-15 times. He's created this whole new industry within the luxury space. But do you agree with them or disagree with them, or what is your take on that bold statement that streetwear is going to die?
I mean, fashion is kind of goes in and out, up and down. I definitely feel like those simple streetwear looks are kind of getting a little played out, kind of boring. Goodness. Everyone's doing them. Big companies, they're copying those styles, and they're making their own, trying to get that that I guess market share out of the industry. And I think it's time to move on and let those real streetwear companies take over and let them do what they do best.
Yeah, I just read an article from Bobby Hundreds of The Hundreds, and he, everyone was asking him what he thought about it, and he was like, I hope it dies, because he basically took the streetwear market and then took it to luxury brands. And Bobby Hundreds was like, I'm excited for that trend to move on, so real streetwear brands can start capitalizing on streetwear again. The market share was stolen by a lot of the luxury brands, and leaving these hustlers, these small brands that haven't been grinding out for 10-20 years, left with fighting these big boys. And so I thought that was like very mature of him to be like, cool, like leave so we can kind of grow
For sure.
grow again, I guess, because I don't see streetwear going anywhere because it's a cultural thing. It's a lifestyle, community. Even though suburban kids are into the streetwear game, the anti-establishment brands are always going to be there, and so I think that gives kind of a stage for those type of brands to express themselves, on a larger scale.
I agree. I mean, you see these, big, like real big companies copy styles and copy trends and just kind of follow what's hot. And I think they're, like you said, they're getting kind of bored and they're kind of saturating the market. So it's time for them to move onto stealing the next look. So.
Well, I saw, there's on Instagram a lot of creators. They would, small makers that they have an Etsy shop and they're selling enamel pins or patches or, cute designs. And then you see Zara and H&M ripping their designs almost like exact. And it's just crazy that these big organizations, they have the money. It's just super lazy. I know the money is, or the almighty dollar is a lot of these corporations' focus, but that's just lazy, man. Like you can afford original creative artwork, and you decide, because this person's design's trending, let's just completely copy it. They're small, we'll crush them. By the time we sell, a couple $1 million worth of that design, we get a cease and desist, whatever. It's sad that they should be leading the way, but nowadays,
they're copying their way.
I know, it's crazy. And I think Virgil goes into talking about how the next phase is going to be kind of upcycled or throwback style. So like these fashion houses are going to look into their archives and kind of reimagine some of their collections, but then also they see, people want to have this unique individual style, and so buying mass market products, even on the luxury space, it doesn't necessarily define them. So that would be a huge hit for big luxury brands in retail if more people go the vintage route. But while that might be a trend, I don't see that necessarily being mainstream because people are lazy. They want you to tell them what to wear, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and then you see it out there so much where these vintage collectors have these amazing collections of the vintage Ralph and the vintage Tommy, and then you see the actual brand like Ralph getting in touch with them for their collections because they don't have that big of a collection of their own vintage pieces.
Interesting.
I was watching my dude Sean Witherspoon, and he has an amazing Ralph Lauren collection, and it's just I'm so glad because I'm all into all that. So it's kind of cool to see people how when they mix the new pieces with the vintage pieces and they create their own looks and they make that unique statement.
Yeah, you're not going to get who wore it better. You're not going to be this guy has this look and this guy has this look. It happens a lot. You see on the runway, they're like when women wear the same exact dress that it creates an uproar. Who wore it better? But I think the foresight of some people, like I've never had that vision of like I'm gonna collect. That I think you have to be a very patient person to collect and not wear or just keep over time. Like I remember I had my dad's old baseball cards, and it was like Sandy Koufax and Mickey Mantle and all these awesome cards, and he gave them to me, and we went to a card show back when I was 12 or 13, and I was trying to get enough money to go visit my brother in California, and I was like, all right, I need enough to buy a ticket. And I had all these cards, and this guy, and I don't know where my dad was, he just let me go. But I went outside with these two older gentlemen, and they were like talking, I want to buy that, and that. Let me go to the ATM and I'll be back. And so me and my buddy were like, yeah, this is going to be awesome. He wanted $50 for this. And then he comes back and he hands me the $50 and he's like, thanks, man. And he was going to grab all of them. And I was like, what do you mean? I thought you wanted 50 for that one and that one. He's like, no, I meant for the whole collection.
Oh, man.
And I was gullible and ignorant, and I really wanted to go see my brother, and I sold him all these amazing baseball cards for basically $50 or $60. And that guy, you know, he took advantage of a kid, man. It was like, that's brutal. But, you know, these guys that are collecting things from Ralph Lauren 10, 15 years ago, or even, you know, when it hasn't been popular, they're like going out and setting up these pieces. Like when I go to a thrift store, I'm like, okay, if I see something cool, I'll grab it. But I've never been the one to, you know, search online, I'm going to get this piece. But now StockX and, you know, all these websites that are specifically marketplaces for this vintage stuff.
Yeah.
So it's pretty awesome that these big brands are going to, you know, Sean Witherspoon's not necessarily small, but there's plenty of other collectors out there that are just dudes and girls in their, you know, they're just one-man teams that are fans of it, and they're going to use these to inspire the future, seeing what the current audience that finds it cool, what they see cool about it, and they're going to try to bring it back. So kind of going on these trends. And I recently wrote an article in Screen Print magazine talking about what I have seen, or what I see that is going to be trending in 2020, not only with garment in casual wear specifically, but also decoration. And, you know, for those of you that aren't familiar with what decoration means, you know, a lot of people are only familiar with screen printing or embroidery, but there's so many other options within those within that decoration style for apparel that people don't utilize. And so I wrote this article wanting to help people not only in our industry, but help their clients come up with something that's a little more fashion forward and trendy. And so going into what is trending, you know, fashion's always kind of changing, and most people aren't going to be able to keep up with it. You know, that's why fast fashion became a thing. Is they're like, the more collections we release to people, the more they're going to buy, the more they're going to consume. You know, at the end of the day, it's a business. Very few brands are focused on of the sustainability, like saving Mother Earth. They only end up doing that when they get enough flack from other organizations. But what is trending is set a precedence. You know, the big trend agencies are starting trends, you know, 2-3 years in advance. And according to Fashion Insider magazine, they talk about, you know, the forecasting agencies, they're looking into future trends is not just limited to, you know, colors and materials for the next couple years, but they're trying to go into the lifestyles and buying habits, you know, of the consumer, and what they see, you know, what they see the consumer and their desires of, you know, what's valuable now, but what are they going to buy in the future. So like companies like WGSN, TrendSpot, Stylist, they are the forecasting agencies for these big brands, and then everything from there kind of trickles down to the masses. And so when we're in the custom apparel market, very few of the brands in this industry are the trendsetters. You know, most of them are coming out with what these forecasting agencies are setting out. You know, some brands are taking that street style and they become a trendsetter, but most people aren't the trendsetter. And so when we are looking at our industry, because our industry is usually a few seasons behind, some are a year behind, if not more, is how do we take these trends that these big fashion houses create and bring them into our industry. So I know we talked a little bit last episode about the trends. You personally, what do you use to you know, kind of not only trend research, but how is your design style influenced by those trends? What is your process and all that?
I like to do research online, read magazines, definitely keep my eye out on the streets, you know, whatever I go downtown or even to the mall, I like to see what trends are coming in slowly and which ones are kind of going out. You as a creative designer, you have to build that eye to pay attention to those small little trends that you kind of see, picking up steam.
And I think a lot of people they're almost scared of trend research because what if, they're not creative or they don't have this taste level or this eye that, you have developed over the years. And so there's kind of 4 things that I put together in this article to help people figure out, like, where do you start? How do you start taking these trends to adapt to your basically customer? Whether if you're in our industry, your customer is the people buying the merch who is selling it to the end consumer, or if you're a brand, you're selling it direct to the end consumer. How do you not just put a design on a shirt, but how do you actually take these trends into consideration? Mm-hmm. So the first one would be blogs and social media accounts that focus on the trends. Yeah. It's really simple as find trend forecasting Instagram accounts or these big companies, or find these influencers that are working on street style. That's a quick way to see what these people are, curating as far as what they are seeing on the street and what might be coming, down the pipeline. Yep. And number 2 would be Pinterest. I think Pinterest is definitely valuable in trend research. It's one of my favorite, and me and you are constantly sharing images we find and creating these boards for future projects, whether it's now or next year. Mm-hmm. We're building this library internally based on our taste, based on what we see, to influence our customers and then the end consumers' garment pieces. How long have you been on Pinterest, and is that your main, is that one of your main ones, or would it be in the top 3 or 5? Or
I think it's definitely on the top 3. Pinterest, I've been on Pinterest for I want to say 6 years. It's cool that you can keep adding more reference to them throughout the years, and it's just a great arsenal to have. And Instagram is also on my top 3, and the third one is probably I'm really into Hypebeast. They really keep up with fashion and streetwear, shoes. I'm a big shoe guy, so
sure.
Music,
we're
pop
gonna
culture.
Post a picture of your Yeezys at the end of the podcast.
Right on.
You have very good taste in shoes.
Thanks, appreciate it.
With the Pinterest. So for those of you that don't have the time to get on Pinterest, or you're not very active, we're gonna put a link in the comments with kind of my top 3 boards, being specialty ink and heat transfer board, the applique board, and then embroidery board. Those are 3 great ones to be inspired by. Screen printing, embroidery are the 2 main decorations, and so being able to see what's possible. Again, flat screen print, basic plastisol screen print is entry level. While it can be effective and the consumer might not even know the difference, they will notice if that print is elevated or unique textures are used, or raised ink, or specialty embroidery or applique. Like, people will notice those details. They don't, if they like the design, that's cool, but again, my goal is to get people to really appreciate everything that goes into that garment. So I'll link those. So for those of you that don't have the time, just piggyback off of my Pinterest boards, because they're pretty amazing. I'm constantly updating them. Yeah. We have a great one that we're going to be using, I feel like, a lot in 2020, and we'll get more into that in this podcast about decoration and garment trends for the rest of the year. But find out who your customer is, know their kind of style, or even ask those questions too, because I'm sure everyone has different audiences. For the brands, they probably have a specific look but for, people in our industry, their customers run the gamut. So asking those questions, what is your style? What we know the marketplace, but the end client knows who their audience is, knows, the clothes that they're wearing or the style they are. So asking those questions are really important. Another one would be industry magazines.
Yep.
For people in our industry, but also brands, like find out what's trending before your competitor, finds out about that. So the magazines, the resources that manufacturers in our industry put together are important to help you curate your line. And then, like you said earlier, the trip to the mall, we wrote an article, it was earlier in the year, about how I take our team to the mall. And the reason we do that is, one, to get out of the office and get away from the screen, but to go into Abercrombie, American Eagle, Lucky, Nordstrom's, Urban Outfitters, Levi's, all the different brands, and see what are they using, not only as far as design, but also decoration processes. And so our last trip to the mall, I feel, was very valuable.
Yeah.
I don't think we have utilized our market research, at least to the public. We have internally, but we haven't shared that. And maybe that's something we can do in Q1 too.
We should.
Because it's still going to be relevant to most circles. But what were a couple of the trends that we just saw at our last trip to the mall that you would either like to integrate for our design for our customers, or for people to jump on that would separate them?
I'm a big fan of textures and distress, so that's my top choice. I'm also into HD ink, which is high density ink. It gives you this type of dimension that is unique, and it's different from puff ink, but it's a real cool treatment. And
I know it's a difficult one. A lot of printers can't achieve that because it takes a lot of knowledge, because you're building up that print, and if it's not cured right, if the ink mixture is not right, it's not going to have that clean effect. Super Dry is one of my favorite brands, not necessarily the wear, but the inspiration. They are doing every decoration process you can think of, and a lot of it can't be achieved domestically. A lot of it's happening in mass volume overseas, but there's a lot of things you can take from them. In HD, they utilize HD and a lot of cool, in their active wear and even their preppy looks, they are utilizing the HD inks. Anything else that stands out from what you saw, that's kind of consistent with other brands, amongst all the brands? I see
a trend that it's kind of moving in. I'm kind of curious about it, especially because I'm a illustrator, so I know there's machines coming to the market that do direct to garment, and I'm kind of curious on how I can push that print, how I can push my illustration, and that's something that's coming up, and I'm kind of excited about it.
Yeah, one of our partners, Danny, he talked about this on the article. It's hybrid. So I've never been a fan of DTG. I don't think the feel is awesome. It can only work on specific garments, but the technology is growing. DTG is the direct to garment, where these hybrids are, you can basically screen print the underbase, so you can get it not as thick. You don't have to necessarily treat it like you do DTG, but then you can get these full color images, with HD, not high density, but high definition detail, with a million colors, and the flexibility for brands to say, all right, we have this one silhouette and we can create different looks and different styles with one graphic, and it's basically can all be set up digitally instead of creating screens for each one.
For sure. Doing SEPs for your own designs is possibly one of the most time consuming and just difficult to master. So if I can skip, making SEPs, I'm all in. I would like to test out, my design skills with DTG.
Okay. So getting into some of the garment trends for 2020, this last year, custom dyes, custom washes and treatments have been popular. You could, Taylor Swift, Kanye West, the Fresh Prince, they're all using these custom dyes in different ways, and they are the trendsetters. So even though it's been going on in retail, I feel like those trends are going to trickle down still this year to different brands. What did you think, real quick, on the Kanye Sunday service merchandise? What was your initial thought when you saw that?
I mean, I'm a Kanye fan, so most of the stuff he does, I'm a fan of. I thought it was pretty cool, pretty creative. I mean, you're bringing that religious side to fashion, and I think it's fair game. I'm a fan, especially those.
Hold on. Are you? What garments did he print on, and would you spend $300 on that garment?
First of all, I would not spend $300 on a garment that he was selling, because I can probably make my own a little better.
And not on a Gildan shirt.
Not on a Gildan shirt, yeah.
That's I feel like all because you can doesn't mean you should. I feel that's lazy, and I feel like that doesn't respect the buyer, man. Even though it'll sell out, like, it's cool, whatever. But I appreciate those brands that care about their audience, and this line that he put out, I feel like it's 100% like money driven, just because not only the quality of that blank garment that we know, but also the ethical side of the supply chain that, Gildan has gotten in a lot of trouble on how they treat their workers. When you race to the bottom, usually the manufacturer, the factory is the one that suffers. That's a whole nother topic we'll talk about.
That's a whole different episode.
Yeah, but the lines by these major artists they see something, right? They're seeing these trends. They are bringing it to the masses even more so than a lot of these brands are. And then Fresh Prince, some of his shirts had the hypercolor, like the color shifting inks. Do you think people will start using that in their lines, or do you think it's only for kind of specific brands that have a big platform?
I think they will. When you're creating a line, you need to add a couple of pieces that are just so unique and that are gonna start grabbing people's attention, and I think those are it. I mean, those hybrid colors and the holographic ink and all that stuff. It's so cool that you gotta use it. Brands definitely gotta start paying attention and start using those cool prints.
And the tough part is finding the people who can actually execute that, and that's I think a lot of people default because the local printer isn't educating them to what's possible, and they're not trying to push the boundaries. A manufacturer, you need to keep your machines running to be profitable, and all these other specialty, while it's cool, it's hard to make a profit. It's hard to make it lucrative. And so that's, I think, the biggest hurdle for smaller brands is how can they get these things done without investing a ton of money in inventory and doing cut and sew and going overseas. How can they create quicker collections that are with the trends, what is showing big in retail. But again, the execution with their manufacturers, I think, is going to be the tough part.
Yeah, I agree.
And then a few more garment trends that I'm seeing. And then, Angelo, if there's any that stand out to you from my list or something you want to add, please feel free. Another one is color block garments and rugby style stripes. So I recently put out a mini trend report of the rugby look, and a lot of big brands are doing it. It's great for the fall winter. So by the time people get this podcast, it might be for next fall and winter. But especially the rugby long sleeves, it's usually a heavier weight cotton Just a thicker vibe or thicker fabric, I think works well. And then the color blocking, basically you have a block of blue and then maybe a stripe of green and then the sleeves are red. So I think those type of garments I've been seeing a lot in major retail. Another one would be like all over pattern prints on button-up shirts. So
interesting.
Not only kind of the Hawaiian style or golf style, but I've seen a lot of brands just having a lot of fun with all over patterns, whether it's like hot dogs or, a bear surfing, having that all over. And again, those are cut and sew. But it's how can you take that popularity and integrate it into your line? And then I've seen the oversized drop shoulder tees and hoodies. So while streetwear might be going out for the luxury, I feel like that unisex look where women can wear, these baggy shirts, and then, men that are wearing not necessarily overly baggy, but just a little more relaxed of a fit.
Yeah.
I see that, still being popular. My buddy Scott, who you recently met, he works for big brands that are in Zoomies, and he's creating this French Terry short sleeve fleece.
Cool.
Because in California, you don't get much of a winter, so having that transitional piece from winter to summer, you have your short sleeves, so even if it's warm outside, you're still getting some draft and some breathability, but keeping you slightly warm because it does get windy, and the wind coming off the ocean gets chilly at times. So having this short sleeve fleece, I think, is a cool in between, and I could see that making its way to Colorado where we are because it gets cooler, but we do have all 4 seasons where people could have that transitional piece before it gets too cold or before the summer hits.
For sure.
And then my last is seeing the Henleys, short sleeve, long sleeve. Henleys are basically where the collar has 2 or 3 buttons. I think Old Prospector, thermal underwear, comes to mind when that Henley look, but it's being converted into t-shirts and long sleeves and dress shirts. So having that Henley, I think dressing it up a little bit, but then screen printing and bringing it a little more casual, than more business attire. That's what I'm kind of seeing in the marketplace. And then for you, what do you see growing or losing steam with garment trends in 2020?
I mean, you explained, you nailed it on the styles. I mean, I think those are strong. I see brands like those traditional brands like Champion, Russell, Carhartt, Dickies. I see those brands real strong for 2020, and I'm wearing a Russell crew, and I have multiple Champions, and Carhartt. I'm a big fan of Carhartt, and I think those are definitely going to be strong for 2020.
Yeah, and I think there's going to be old brands that are finally that are going to get resurrected. I know Gary Vee bought K-Swiss or invested in K-Swiss to bring that brand up. I've seen Fila, I've seen Kappa. Yeah. Kappa is like a European brand mainly for soccer. They're bringing in this kind of active wear, kind of streetwear vibe. I think the run might not be as long. I mean, Champion's killing it. Like when we went to the mall, we saw Champion in PacSun, in Urban Outfitters, in Nordstrom's.
I mean, business is good for Champion.
Absolutely.
We did notice each store had their own collection, like a Champion collection, which is really unique.
Completely different styles.
Yeah, different styles, different colorways, different prints. I thought it was really unique. I never seen it before, so good for Champion.
Yeah, I think a lot of brands want to be so in their aesthetic that they're not necessarily open to other aspects, but these collaborations that are becoming more and more popular, it opens you up not only to a new audience, because again, retail is brutal. The more you can diversify your collection but still stay true to your aesthetic, I think it's a win-win for for both brands, and it gives you a little bit more of creative freedom to go beyond what your core audience loves, but bring in those little details that they do love into someone else's creative perspective. I see the collaborations just growing and growing,
and it's really interesting because I remember buying Champion at Walmart when I was a kid, right? So
you weren't cool if you just had Russell and Champion.
If you wore that, then you're kind of made fun of. But now it's in the mall and super expensive, and all these collabs are just getting cooler and cooler. It's interesting. I like it.
Yeah, we just recently got on TikTok, or I did, Angelo did too. We haven't done one for the business just because I think the platform's a little too new for kind of business brands, even though there are some brands on there. But Kevin, who is videoing this and on the audio, hey Kevin.
Yo, what's up?
Hope you're not bored yet.
Not at all.
Awesome. So Kevin put together this TikTok that we talked about Champion and how they made a screen print look like applique. And most of our posts were getting 150 to 300 views. And a couple hours after he posted it on TikTok, I looked at the views and it was like 1,100. And I was like, is that right? Like, that seems crazy because, again, we were only getting a few hundred views. And I looked at it 10 minutes later and it was at 2,200. And then I looked at it, an hour later and it was at 3,400. And it got viral. So we're at over 80,000 views right now. And we posted it over a week ago, right, Kevin? Like last Thursday.
And it's still getting hit.
So the organic reach on TikTok, everyone thinks, it's just for teenage kids to dance or lip sync. I think there's so much more opportunity. And we obviously got on because, Gary Vee's been pushing it. But we saw, on Instagram, we've never had more than, maybe 120 views on our biggest post, and we have 1,200 followers. TikTok, we only had 13 followers at the time. Now we have over 50, and we got 900 likes, and it was just basically the Champion was the very first image in the picture. So I think that trend helped, catapult that to viral status. I can see how influencers, get so hyped up on their likes because it was fun. I was refreshing every 5 minutes, but that means, it's getting in front of a ton of eyes, which it's free platform. So for those of you that are looking for a unique way to get your brand out there, and it's not going to be conventional, you're not going to be able to sell to people. People are going to see through that, but show your personality, show behind the scenes. We showed, our company parties or us just talking in our meetings. Like, show who you are. It's a great platform to have fun and give a personality to your brand.
Yeah, I agree. It's almost like people want to see the raw form of who you are instead of being the pretty post on Instagram. You're just
real.
You're
right?
just real.
It's raw.
You're a real person, and you're just doing work or talking with your team, and people want to see that.
Yeah, and posts that are more authentic, I think, get better views. I think people are like, oh, that's produced. So go check it out. The last point today, we want to kind of talk about decoration trends for 2020, and this is going to be for those people who are looking to elevate their brand, to have something a little more unique than that basic screen print, taking in what major retail is showing us, that obviously if they are using it in their line, they've been planning that line for a year or two. So there's something there that is causing them to bring that into their line, which should make everyone be like, all right, how can I integrate that into my line? Not all processes are going to fit your vibe or style, but there's so many out there besides basic embroidery and screen printing that you can utilize to elevate your merch. So a few more points, and I'm going to kind of name them off, and then you can come back and talk about the ones that you might like or see trending as well. Tone-on-tone printing and embroidery. I think this year we've seen a lot of brands doing that.
Yep.
It's such a subtle way, but a very interesting way, because it's not in your face. It's not a bold graphic. it basically looks like part of the graphic or part of the garment, but it's super subtle. And, you know, as far as cost is concerned, we can create either one color, you know, corporate logo print in bright white, or you can take that logo and do a tonal. It's going to be the same price, maybe even cheaper, because you're not always going to have to use an underbase, and it's going to look cooler, whoever that cool is relevant, but or cool is relative. But you know, that tone on tone is super popular in my eyes. Multiple and unique location prints. We started seeing this a lot in the streetwear world. I think it'll still have a little bit of a run, because the more area, like the more creativity, the more locations you have, like the more creativity in the design you can do. Now it takes your garment up a bit more pricey, which you might have to sell it for more. But having those unique locations, and not the unique locations we were talking about last week, like the side print, but sleeves, chest, back, left chest, inside, you know, that garment that we saw from Lucky Brand, they printed a whole story and a whole graphic on the inside neck tag. So like, think creatively, don't just screen print your logo and size, like utilize that space as another thing to talk to your fans. When they put that shirt on, no one else is going to see it, but that wearer, when they put it on in the morning, they're going to see, you know, it could even say, you're going to have a great day today, or you look good, you know, something that it encourages your buyer and makes them happy already when they're wearing your garment. I think it can go a long way. Embossing and fleece, I've seen it, you know, specialty brands do it here and there. It's now becoming a thing. You could get it domestically a couple places, but it's mainly overseas, and embossing is out. So when you think of it, debossing is down, embossing is up and out. So the embossing, being able to give a graphic and a look without screen printing or embroidery. It's part of the garment. It's just that garment is raised. It's a really cool look. Multimedia, using screen print with appliques and patchwork. So, you know, using your background as a screen print and then sewing a patch or sewing, you know, a letter over it to give some dimension. And then metallic accents is what I've been seeing a lot. Do you want to talk a little bit more about some of those print?
Yeah.
Talk more about some of those decoration options?
Yeah, of course.
Go in and talk about some of those decoration trends?
Yeah, of course. Tone on tone it's one of my favorites. I mean, that, especially if you use the correct ink, you can give that you can give a look to every print. Especially if you use the correct ink, you can make the logo or design look different on several garment colors. It'll take some of the actual fabric and, you know, fabric color, and kind of add its own spin to it, and
so kind of like tints the ink basically,
correct.
without tinting it physically.
For sure. It has the some opacity, so it'll look great, but it'll show that garment color, and it'll create this unique look.
And I don't think people share this with the buyer, because again, price is relative. Like, you know, people base one color print, quote me on that, but a one color print and a one color print done well, you know, is going to have a very different impact on how people wear it and buy it. And so, you know, taking those several colors, there's going to be no extra markup. So you're going to now have 5 different shirts with, it looks like 5 different color treatments because it's tonal. And now you can test the market to see which is going to sell better, and then, you know, go all in on that. But I think it gives you a lot of flexibility, and it's soft, right? It's it's going to be a really soft print. So yeah, we're big fans of that. You know, I know we'll be probably utilizing that tonal embroidery and puff embroidery on a lot of our garments in 2020.
Yeah, I agree. I'm excited. And just, you know, something to tell the creators out there. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. Specialty ink is usually heavy. You know, it's a heavy hand, it's expensive, and it can make or break your shirt. So
Sure.
just gotta be careful of how much you use it. And
Yeah, no solid blocks, like no thick fills, because it's the wear will fill it on the inside.
I always go for a save, 20 to 30% of specialty ink. That'll give you that nice pop, but it won't give you a shield on your chest.
Yes, we are anti-shields snobs here. I think at the end of the day, how do you take learning from the trends and apply it to your clients? Because at the end of the day, a cool shirt that no one wears misses the mark. So while we're saying, we see this as being cool and creative, again, you have to think of the whole cohesive line of, for your customer, even if it's one shirt, like, why is someone going to wear that shirt outside of that event or in the future? We talked about it yesterday, or we talked about it last episode, is getting your garment sold is one thing, but you want people to wear it over and over again, because again, it that's what builds your brand. That you'll get more credibility from actual people wearing it than any Facebook or Instagram ads could ever do.
Yeah. And us as, the creative designers, we are trying to give you the best sellable, garments. So if you hear our advice, you should take it, because we kind of know what we're doing. And we want those reorders. We want your stuff to sell, and we want your clients to be happy. So
absolutely, we'll always be politely opinionated. We wouldn't be who we are if we just took the client's direction. A lot of companies are just order takers. Like, they need to put the minimal time into a project, and you tell me, give me a design, we'll print it, you pick a garment. But we want to look at it more holistically, like the decoration, the design, the garment, and really what is your audience going to like. And so, at the end of the day, if the client thinks what they know best, and then, we'll support them with it. But we wouldn't be that valuable company if we're not giving you our opinion. And again, it's not just my opinion based on my taste. It's my opinion based on what I see in the marketplace and the thousands of other projects that we're producing to give you that experience, for free. And so when people are like, your shirts are a little more expensive than the guy down the street, and we're like, yeah, but you're only basing it off of that print on a shirt. You're not looking at what comes with it, that experience that we are for our clients, and then we work with our vendors to make sure they execute. And I think in 2020, a lot of middle men or middle companies will be eliminated, because a lot of the printers and manufacturers are getting a little more savvy, and they're helping their customers. So you have to bring value to that customer. And again, trends, design, development, that is what is going to separate you from giving a client a catalog and say, tell me what you want.
I agree. I mean, we do it all for your good. We just want to make you look good, and we do our best, and listen to our opinions.
Yep. Well, thanks, Angelo. I appreciate your time today. I hope our listeners can find value in this, and please comment below. Let us know if you want to know more about the trends that we're talking about. We're happy to send you links to different articles and some visual images. We're going to put the link to my Pinterest account in the comments. And again, at the end of the day, we want to help you create a sellable, wearable garment based on what your audience is seeing. Again, everyone has different styles, and cool is relative, but those end wearers are going to be influenced by what they're seeing in the mall and what they're seeing online. So how can you piggyback off of those trends and bring it into your brand and your style to create the perfect garment?
Yep.
Thank you. This is Jeremy with Amber Creative.
This is Angelo Montiel.
And Fashion to the People.